Greetings and salutations, brave hearts, urbanites, and Coach Mad Hatters. And welcome to our 90-day journey by heart installations for days 51 through 57. I come before you inside of a Phoenix grand rising, and so I've called upon the presence of my mahogany wood ancestors, gods and goddesses of divine trifecta and interventions. I've welcomed them to travel alongside us to ignite and activate our clarity and creativity so that we may know the truth by the way that it feels, especially when it's resonating with the highest of our goodness, uniqueness, and wholehearted individuality. For those who have intrinsically enlisted into my love team, I thank you kindly. As your presence continues to encourage me to level up and honor my own tender transparencies and authentic expressions. During this time together, we shall tune into the frequencies of Divine's omniversal heartbeat and intuitive rhythms, so that the sharing of our inner court wisdoms shall allow us to tap into the clues and cues that decipher the bigger pictures and accurately and automatically sense the 6 degrees of our closeness, storylines, community affections, affirmations, and divine timing. I greatly appreciate your presence. The CMHU Coaching Conclave is now in session. Ashe. It's such a delight to share this time and space with you. Thanks for joining me. I am your host for the moment, Coach T. Marie Wiggins, and I am here to guide our Clubhouse Astro Affinity Sage and Scholars through a self-based specialty coaching that involves the elevation of our astrological awareness and zodiacal consciousness to help us rekindle and enrich our courtships with self as well as our individual muses. I like to call it Le Numinous Activated. And numinous means the collective heart. The collective heart chakra, if you will. And since time is fluid and not linear, whenever you are guided to discover this session, it's an indication of your portion of divine's intervention, so that it may reconcile emotionality. So if it resonates, you do good to appreciate. So this particular session is going to allow me to recollect a little bit of research and discovery that I have been knee-deep in for the past few days. So Saturn and Pluto is in Capricorn, and Capricorn is my sun sign. So, as well as Pluto is in my first house, and things have been interesting, remarkable, intriguing, intimidating, and a whole bunch of other stuff all at the same time. It's been confusing, it's been frightening, it's been fantastic, it's been alluring, supportive, it has been strength. I got the message a few days ago to be thankful for my pain, as it is the ingredients to my wisdom, as well as me bumping into the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And it's the audio. I have tapped into the audiobook of Think and Grow Rich, and it's not the original version. The original version was copyright in 1937. So, of course, those who were privy to the original content, the the original concentration, um, in my opinion, are the more privileged, because many revisions have happened since then, and so now the version that anyone would get nowadays has been chopped and screwed, to say it respectfully. But either way, um, it's still a good resource, and it definitely is um, an elemental for immaculate conversations. Discovering my Pluto in Capricorn, which has been in and out of retrograde from November 27th, 2008, and it will be in Capricorn until November 20th, 2024. Pondering over this fact alone has had me reconcile many things within from 2008 until right now that were unexplainable before. Even investigating what it means for Pluto to be in Capricorn to a Capricorn, what it means for Saturn and Pluto to be in Capricorn to a Capricorn. It left me stumped and in awe, truly wondering about how many Capricorns are actually dealing with the massive, the massive experiences of having the life as they known it blown to smithereens, to have to rebuild from the ground up, from ground zero, and what that looks like and how well they have endured such a feat. And what's interesting is that we're just moving into, I want to say, yeah, in less than 60 days, we'll be just moving into year 2020, which means we still have 4 more years that Pluto will be in Capricorn. Pluto is the symbology. No, that's not true. The influence of death. Well, as well as the symbology. Because I continue to think about the death card and it being a Pluto card, but it's beyond that. But that is what's coming to mind as I attempt to interpret death and rebirth, death and resurrection. Definitely with me sensing that I am amidst a phoenix rising phase in my own personal evolution of self. I have been urged to stop trying to save those things within my life that are dead and need to be buried. S- to cease from holding on to that which is no longer contributing to m- my maturity and ultimate evolution. I want to say for the last 2 or 3 recordings, I have been challenged to complete them. This will be just of today, my 5th attempt to get this recording completed. And I don't think that my energy is low particularly, but it is very unique. Um, there are no twinges of sorrow or anything of that nature, but it is highly concentrated. It is very serious and authentic, but unapologetic. Yeah, unapologetic. Do you have parts of yourself that you have to stand firm on because it does not go with the flow of popular opinion? And when I say popular opinion, I'm talking about within the circles of those who would consider themselves close to you. Like, do you have to stand up for yourself even when it may be at odds with everyone around you, thus putting you into this black sheepish mode where you do truly stand apart from everyone else? I'm going to read a passage from the information that I tapped into over these last couple of days while researching Pluto and Capricorn and what it could mean to some of us, the significance of its presence. Because the word procrastination, or the catchphrase victimhood, or what's another one? There's another divisive phrase that popular opinion loves to throw around, bad energy, or what else is it called? I think that's good though. Right now there are no more words that are coming to mind, but it gets misconstrued quite a bit because we believe, or have been conditioned in this group thought. We believe that um, the plantation mentality is a covering of all, and that if this group is doing it, then it is the way that it should be done, and everyone should fall in line. And those that do not are somehow a threat to the flow of societal norm. But reading or pondering over my discoveries over the last few days begs to differ. What could be readily situated as procrastination? Uh, where are we? Tell me where we are. Let's see. My Pluto in the first house has definitely been showing me how different I really am from the norm, how my sense isn't so common. And it definitely explains how is it that for very much all of my life, I have stood as the only one in the room with a different opinion. One of the quotes that I bumped into earlier today, and I probably will not be able to correctly pronounce the author's name, but the quote is, "Discovery consists of seeing what everyone else has seen and thinking what nobody else has thought." It's the fundamentals of proper perception. No one, absolutely no one, is going to be able to take in, process, and put out as you do, and vice versa, because no one has been molded or contoured, seeing as that we are products of our environments and we are the evolution of our experiences. No two people have ever experienced and or processed emotionally or intellectually the same. And yet we continue to judge and try to stuff people into boxes of similarity versus respecting the difference of each individual. We're all different. We all process different. We all feel different. We see differently. And so why do we judge for the difference instead of respecting the difference as a contribution to our diversity? We love to talk about how we are engaged in proper diversity, and yet we judge people for being different. Or we think that because they are different, that they are somehow wrong with them because we're right and they're wrong. I don't really like talking in context of right and wrong anymore because it seems to dismiss the difference between someone. I am really intrigued when I meet someone who's different and unapologetically different. It gives me something to awe in. I don't want anyone to be like me. I want them to be like them. And I want them to share themselves as it was intended for them to come here and share themselves. I don't no longer want to judge people for what they have to offer, even if it opposes what I have to offer. There are opposing colors in the color spectrum. Like, that's just the natural way that things unfold in this dimension. This dimension is full of variety. The only way that said variety can be put up under any type of control is to condition it to believe that it must be this way or that way in order to be valuable, or in order to be able to contribute something that is valuable. We must like it in order for us to embrace it, in order for us to endorse it. Within our modern sensitivities, we truly have begun to misconstrue difference for disrespect, as if to say that if you don't agree with me, or if you come that is at any angle opposite of me, then it's a sign of disrespect. If you don't agree with me, you disrespecting me. I beg to differ. And the reason why I do is because just by researching my birth chart alone and what the planetary alignments and energies have meant to me in conjunction with their influences upon me, has proven to me, if it's done nothing else, that there is a myriad of unseen activity that is going on from individual to individual, and that situations and circumstances are weaved and quilted on a level that's incomprehensible to the human psyche, especially to the social conditioned human psyche. We are afraid of death. And just that small elemental in social consciousness has allowed us to be manipulated, molded and manipulated into these confines that dictate so-called right and wrong. So let's see if I can put a little bit more intellectual support into my rambling. And it's amazing because I found myself um, immersed in all sorts of content and almost got manic about pulling and sifting through all that was being put before me so that I could better understand what it meant to have Pluto in my first house, as well as Pluto being in Capricorn from 2008 until 2024. And that's what I was going to tap into Pluto being in my first house, but I really want to hone into um, Pluto being in Capricorn. Let me see. And I know I have it. Or I had it. Let's see. Give me just a moment. Thank you for your patience while I look for this. As well as Mercury. Let me just say this sidebar real quick. With Mercury being in retrograde and Virgo being my moon and my ascending, this will probably be a very drawn out. Oh, this is not going to be nice. I well, let's do this. Let's see. Okay. So, or maybe that is the one that I, hang on. My apologies. Let's see. Also, now that I'm flipping through on YouTube, Insightful Astrology with Maria de Simone. She gives um, a really good segment to the understanding of, let me see if I can, to the Pluto, to the Saturn Pluto conjunction in Capricorn, to look her up and take a look at that. That segment is also really good with the understanding of Pluto being in Capricorn. And Pluto being in Capricorn is not just significant to Capricorns, but it does hit a little bit differently if, as well, Pluto being in your chart, which means have a individualized effect on its influence. So, when Pluto is located in the first house of a natal chart, it creates the most noticeable individuals that exist. Such natives have an intense character and have a dark atmosphere hovering over them. They often prefer to wear black or otherwise dark clothes and are often called morbid. Individuals with Pluto in the first house have an incredibly strong willpower. When they desire something, they will do everything to get it. Most times they will succeed even if the chances of success are narrow. They are aware of their power. Plutonian people know their abilities, and when they use them, their effect cannot be unnoticed. The world categorizes them as mysterious and secretive, and indeed they maintain a lot of privacy about their life and who they really are. For them, living in the shadows is quite natural. And that will go to also affirm my specialty in shadow work and how I have blended in the Coach Mad Hattery as a significant guide, a significant tour guide to that which is considered the road to redemption, or what I like to call intrapersonal intelligence. Let's see here. Their family might be poor, or they might have general survival issues. It is quite probable that such patterns will reappear in life as Pluto rules death and rebirth. The death might just be symbolical, indicating a situation or way of life that has to die in order to give birth to a new, which in many times is for the better. In any case, individuals with such an aspect will have to experience a lot of transformative experiences during their lives. These experiences make them wiser than the average, as they can understand the bigger picture of life, death, and the transcending periods between. There probably are emotional scars left from their early years, which makes them rather harsh and difficult to handle. They always try to see things on a deeper level to understand the reasons behind facts and foresee possible outcomes. So that's Pluto in the first house. I did want to share that just a little bit, but that is not what I really truly wanted to um, wanted to share. Um, but for some reason, I can't find what I had already had situated to share during this segment, and I wonder what that's about. But I'm not gonna spend too much time trying to do this. Well, you know what I'm gonna do? That's what I'm gonna do. So instead of just letting the time just run out, so stand by for a minute. That's what I'm gonna do because I'm gonna find what I needed to share in this segment. So please stand by. All right, and we're back. I was not able to locate, which is intriguing all in itself. But I did find some other places that pretty much says the same thing. But here's one thing that I've noticed that is equally intriguing is what can be found on the internet and how we may critically analyze, purposefully analyze. What is it that we find? How do we sift through content and vet and validate it to be um, a true source of? And mainly with the dates. And I say all this because I know, as well as you may know, that certain things are misleading on purpose. Certain things are propped up to serve as educational detours because knowledge is essentially power. You may not manipulate those that know, which gives all sorts of support to why it was so important. It was imperative that certain folks within the social strata didn't know certain things. To this day, it strikes me odd for those who use the term common sense. It seems like such a social conditioning definition. A socially conditioning. It just seems like the mm, the summit to Dr. Seuss's Sneetches, or the haves and the have-nots. Like that's what common sense strikes me as. So folks that speak like, well, that's common sense. Common for who? Who sense is this common to? To say that only those that assimilate in this, that, and the third is it common to. So if you're outside of that assimilation, not only is it not common, it's nonsense. Makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Free thinkers very rarely dance inside the realms of common sense. Pluto causes endings and new beginnings. It forces us to surrender as it rebuilds us from the inside out. During the passage of Pluto, we see extremes and compulsions in the areas of life associated with the sign through which Pluto travels. And with the Capricornian association with governments and government buildings, I would expect a worldwide attempt to solidify a global government and minimize individual liberties. Pluto details with issues of power on a personal level, such as personal empowerment, as well as the power structures that govern all of humanity that fall under the rubric of the Capricorn theme. For me personally, if I may uh, respectfully segue into what I consider intrapersonal empowerment, and in hindsight, I am figuring that when Pluto uh, transitioned into Capricorn in 2008 is when the breakdown of what I had known to be true, what I had known to be my overall reality began. I had no explanation for any of the breakdown. I honestly did not have the vocabulary to explain to me so that I could properly comprehend what was actually going on. And the more and more I become in tune with the vocabulary surrounding my astrological wisdoms, the more and more I feel cheated out of my grade school days, for this is not taught in school. And the reason why it's not taught in school is because it is the direct through way into authentic expression and individuality. If Cogswell is building cogs, it is not going to teach the cogs about its individuality by way of its astrological influences and planetary infusions. It's just not getting ready to do that because it wants everyone to identify as sane. Diversity, truly, the true meaning, the true indulgence of diversity is the kryptonite to trends and traditions and social conditioning trajectories. And the only way to maintain control is to have everyone act and react accordingly. That's why there's so many laws. And that's why the human psyche is conditioned in said laws from preschool. It's a law to walk on the right side of the hallway. It's unlawful to run through the hallways. Also, it's a health and liability issue, which we truly understand, but I'm just making a point of how the indoctrination begins from the moment they step into this thing that we want to socially call school. And for the most part, the schooling atmosphere is Lord. Like that is the way that most of the psychological ramifications are contoured. We hand our children off to the schoolhouse. We don't pop in. We don't question. We don't analyze the content. Nothing. We just send them to school, and whatever is said goes, making the schoolhouse or those within the schoolhouse the sole director of what our children will consider lesson and scholarship. There is no self driven scholarship, there is no unique, customary a la carte for learning. And if the children or if the child does not adhere to the way that has been dictated within the schoolhouse, then the child is labeled special or unlearner or some type of behavioral delinquent or something of that nature. And we even tap into that. And then the oh my gosh, and I know I'm going down a rabbit hole with this one. I know I am. But maybe it's time that we talk about it. Seeing as that we're already beyond the halfway point of the 90-day journey by heart, we are to consider our heart's notions. We are to contemplate our heart's desires. And we are in the season of Scorpio ruled by Pluto. We are in the season of death and rebirth. We are in the midst of a phoenix rising in Capricorn. So all the structures and traditions and all the things that we look in light of right and wrong are now being put up under the scope for revision. I have taken up the cause, personally and professionally, to dismantle the sensationalized horror driven by fear of death. And I bumped into this simply by investigating my existence, investigating the endorsement to my existence. I've been toggling back and forth with this thing of love and what unconditional love truly, truly means and what conditional love has been meaning. Throughout my life, it feels like the bulk of my experiences have been based on conditional loving. And as long as I maintained certain conditions, then certain folks will love me. My Pluto being in Capricorn, and it's interesting how I am now coming to the knowledge of this because it used to pop in and out of my head every now and again, and I would dismiss it. To say that, all of the things that's going on with you is so that you can unapologetically own your individuality. That you will begin to embrace your differences. That you are different from anybody else that walks this planet. And to not shrink by that which makes you different. And be okay with the fact that you won't fit in all the time, every moment, moment to moment, for all the days of your life. And you must be okay with that. Generation upon generation upon generation, those that look like me have been taught, whether directly or indirectly, that their love must have some type of conditions. Why? Because over here on this side of the water, on this land, my people were only allowed to receive any type of emotional reconciliation as long as it was within the bubbles by which society had carved out or had created. To love freely was not part of the scope. To walk through life without judgment, that wasn't part of the scope. You are a product of your environment. And so, are we truly going to continue to ignore the fact that emotional reconciliation has to be practiced? And it can only be properly practiced through certain leading examples. If we don't switch up the examples, then it will continue to stay the same and it will reciprocate what it knows. Yes, we've learned how to say we love you. I love you. We learn easily how to say that. But we still don't truly know what it means, especially not to love without condition. Very rarely do we love a human just for its humanness. Why? Because as a product of certain environments, you had to be the champion of niggas. You had to be the one that could pull the most crops or could hail in the most cotton, or you had to be able to bring in, you had to be able to produce, you had to be able to generate, you had to be able to work. And so when you are part of the working society, being brought into that is the way you're weighed in with regards to your existential value. If I am to go on honoring the invitation for me to be thankful for my pain, as it is the elemental, the fundamentals of my wisdom, especially in conjunction with the notion that I came here for specific reasons and that Saturn and Mercury endorsed my existence, seeing as that Capricorn Sun, Virgo Moon, Virgo ascending. Those are the ruling planets by which I am heavily influenced. At this particular time and space, for me to be midlife, right here, right now, born in the early 70s. And I often wonder too, and it's not even, yeah, it's a wonder, but it's an intrigue as well. Um, how sometimes I wish that I was this age in the early 70s. I wonder what life was like for those that were in their mid 40s going into their 50s in the early 70s. What life was like. As a mahogany wood ascendant. And I like to say mahogany wood because there's a certain cultural denomination that's fixated to Hollywood, as well as those that are fixated to the golden spruce. I've noticed that certain circles of emotional endowment sometimes is joined with the power of a natural elemental. earth, wind, fire, air. There are some tribes that co-join their symbology around the wind, some around fire, some around earth or the elements of earth, as well as water, the ocean. Like Oshun is part of the ocean mass, and there are a lot of other water gods and goddesses that many folk will attune to, aka the overall umbrella of what modern day will consider pagan. Pagan gods were the elemental gods and goddesses of earth, wind, air, fire. And with me being a, as I say and will often say, seeing is that we are dealing with zodiacal awareness and consciousness, the building up of. Because just imagine the type of scholarship and self education that we can be involved in if astrology was part of our grade school curriculum. If to know thyself from an astrological means was part of the household traditions and the true home economics of it all. Like we understood each other through the infusions or the lack thereof via someone's birth chart. It baffles me that I'm learning it so late, and it stumps me that I do not know my children according to the infusions of their birth charts. That I want to raise them according to the traditional trajectories of a worker, and that they're only valuable if they are able to learn the grade school curriculum that will transmute into skills to ultimately be a worker. That's the only reason what they came here for. That baffles me. It definitely baffles me, seeing is that this notion is being intimately challenged by the inner conversations that dwell within me about how their ruling planets had a certain agenda for them being here. All, in my humble opinion, was discovered and affirmed and confirmed in the 5D, and then they embodied in the 3D. That by the mere sanction of me saying, go to school, go get honor roll, get good grades so you can learn these skills and get a good job so you can go work for them. Just that trajectory alone is the kryptonite to that which I am discovering and studying today. Yet again, puts me outside of the circle of popular opinion. Continues to keep me dancing on the outer fringes of what's trendy. I often giggle how I am a new type. I'm a new type of antisocial. Because to stay inside of the stratus of social will mean that I will have to adhere to all the conditionings that is brought to continue to prop up that which is social. And since we do not research the history of society and what it means to truly be social, We think to be antisocial is some type of anti-human feat. And it's like, no, because I'm really truly more antisocial conditioning than I am anti mingling with people. And that there in itself is a difference. To dig a little deeper into what it means socially versus what it means individually is where I am. To provoke and prompt a deeper dig, as well as the courage to be oneself, to accommodate and protect that which dwells within, outside of the confines of dismissing oneself so that you may prop up all that dwells without. It's bringing a different notion as well to the as above, so below. In my sense of viewpoint, the above and the below leaves this third dimension in the middle. It brings a lot of sense when I think about J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle Earth, especially when we're talking in the sense of multi-dimensional being. And just by directing one's awareness and undivided attention, it could actually force itself into another dimension, into a different timeline. That its consciousness has the wherewithal to release itself from its embodiment and return back to it. That it literally could will itself into the arms of death, or it could will itself away from the arms of death. I am now saying more and more and more that Wiz Khalifa makes death so sexy. And I mean sexy. If you know anything about Apple TV's television series Dickinson, based on, it's not an account of, but it's based on some of the fundamental aspects of the poet Emily Dickinson, her life, and her timeline during her moments of immersion as a prolific poet. Uncanny. And I say that in direct line of my own emotional evolution, because I had been, what's the word I'm looking for? I had been provoking death to present itself to me in different lights so that I may have firsthand commentary regarding its existence, as well as its timely and so-called untimely presence. We love to say we love to say someone's death was untimely, as if we're actually the true keepers of time. We, on the earth plane, very rarely know someone's origination date and expiration date. They could have always been scheduled to leave this realm on that date. But because we have such problems letting go, or have such problems with understanding what we actually own in this realm and what we don't. We like to throw out words to make death seem like a thief in the night, when inside the unseen realms, the places that we hardly ever tap into without it being considered some type of spooky feat or some type of unrighteous quest. Death gets a bad rap all the time. And me included, I'm part of that. I don't like when death comes into this realm and, usher out the celestial out of embodiment. I don't. But because of certain very significant things happening to me firsthand has provoked me to go ponder beneath the heart into the root of the matter. My investigations for the last shucks. And now that the more and more I think about it, with Pluto being in Capricorn, I'm pretty sure it started 2008. Unwittingly, I had no idea that my contemplations about my existence would be this fucking deep. I had no idea that my friendships were going to get tested, my family ships were going to get tested, my situation, my placement within my sibling tribe was going to get tested, my money was going to get tested, my entire being. And that forth, which I would call the reasonings for me being here, have been completely burnt to ashes with a newness immersion. I have had to learn a totally different vocabulary with regards to my existence, outlook, sensations, feelings, intellect, all of it, the whole 9 yards. And I had no idea that any of this was happening. Inside the astrological realms, we speak often about a Saturn return. Now, with me being a Capricorn, I figured it was an exclusive because I hear Saturn, I think Capricorn, I think exclusivity. And then it began to amaze me the more and more I researched, realizing that this has something to do with every human being on the planet. Every celestial source that is within embodiment inside this realm has a so-called Saturn return. Whether you have Saturn in your chart or not. When Saturn is influential within this realm, you feel it on some level, in some shape, form, or fashion. And those that do have Saturn and Capricorn in their chart, they feel it more so. And if you're born within this part of and I'm still learning, still a novice. So yeah, I won't get to rambling and start filling in the blanks with my kind of hoopla. I digress. Yeah, I was about to get in with it. Okay. Man, oh man. This is the season to better understand death. This is the season to fondly embrace the metaphora and the unliteral senses of what it means to you as an individual. It's also a time to encourage the shifting of one's paradigm around the closing out of that which could be considered dead in one's life, and the welcoming and accommodating and accommodations of that which is new or being reborn in one's life. And that we are to release the urges of trying to resuscitate with any that should be dead, all that should be dead. And that our time and attention is the true new. It's the unrefundable coin, honestly. Anything that is man-made stays in this in this realm, which is of man making. It is the realm that the human controls on a certain level. Because I still believe, of course, this is nature's realm. This is nature's 3D. And so that's the guiding force. But within human existence, human also has a unparamount source of power and capability. So I think I'm going to end it here. I'm just trying to look over to make sure that there isn't particularly something that I must include. So inside the story, The Invisible Library, which I believe is a fantastical means to give us an interpretation of one's Akashic records. And we all have a tapping into that, which I believe is AKA our invisible library card. So the story, The Invisible Library, particularly the book titled The Burning Page. And I listened to the audio book version, so I can't tell you where about in the story this can be found. But if you're familiar with the story, or if you're intrigued by the story and you take a listen, then I will put in the space of encouragement that it highlights it when you come across it. But but the conversation was speaking about panic, the panic of humans. And so inside the conversation, and this is what I wrote down, panic is the last thing we can afford. Panic will have folks running off in different directions, rushing around in haste, trying to save the library. Panic is the panic is the antithesis. Why can I don't know what that word is. And antithesis. I know, I'm like, come on. To good. So panic is the antithesis to antithesis. Why does that word? I'm struggling with that word. To good organization. Panic is messy. I am against panic on a point of principle. Those that contour societies, those that build societies, those that make policies to regulate societies do not want anything that deals with panic or chaos. It's uncontrollable. It's messy. And as long as the powers that be have no control, There will always be a need, or as long as the powers that be contend with the possibility of not having control, there will always be a need for social conditioning. There will always be a need for traditions. There will always be a need for trend and trajectory. There will always be a need for pro societal behaviors, which is AKA the kryptonite to individuality, to uniqueness, to the reason why you go and sit in a classroom to be graded on content and context of that which is considered indoctrination. So yeah, I'm going to end it here. I'm not going to hop, skip, and jump this segment any longer. I feel happy with regards to my due diligence to get it completed. Um, and so, yeah, I think it's a wrap, folks. If you do have the urge to tap into The Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, please do so. I think it's an incredible read, as well as The Invisible Library. And I know that the name of the Genevieve, I don't know Genevieve's last name at the moment. Maybe I'll take the liberty of linking the audiobook inside of the keynotes. And so, yeah, so thanks for joining me, and I wish you well.